Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it, because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
The worldwide leader of podcasting excellence, the king of podcasts radio network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
And thanks for joining me here for another Wrestling is Real podcast. We're going to start the 2023 wrestling year in review. Talk about peak Bloodline, the lead up to WrestleMania, and some of the best storyline telling we've had in the company in a long time. Really, the Bloodline storyline itself, at its peak, delivering some of the best storylines we had. Multi-layered, multifaceted, and engaging. And honestly, I feel like ever since the Bloodline, since the Usos split up, that right now, with the Usos no longer with each other together in the Bloodline, I feel like we're in complete Bloodline withdrawal. The Bloodline storyline is not like it was. And don't tell me it was with LA Knight in the mix. It wasn't. I mean, kind of, sort of. But really, it's not the same thing as having the Bloodline going against each other and having that whole debacle, that whole rift, the sibling rivalry, the Bloodline Civil War, all of that. So great. But if you're going to go ahead and encompass the entire year, I'm still going to say that WWE really had a great year because of that. Because they give us that storyline and it delivered consistently. And it was the best reason to watch SmackDown. And it made WrestleMania. It made everything else leading up to it. Royal Rumble. It made everything going up to Elimination Chamber. All of it. It made it wonderful. And then going on after that, that was just a wonderful time. So we're going to talk all about that. We'll talk about AEW also, where when they're coming off such a high of so many different things that were going on and going through some hardships when they had CM Punk, they dropped him. And the fact that, that we're not going to talk about that part because in the early part of the year, things were pretty good. There was still a thing where they start off the year trying to go ahead and bring the pillars together, MJF as champion, and trying to just build more on the fact that they need to do something more to get the younger stars up and at it. Less focus on the veterans, which they've done. And it's just right now that AEW is in a way where they're just a bit in limbo right now. They're just kind of rolling through the motions. It's a bit autopilot right now on storylines. They're good storylines, but they're not knocking out home runs right now. They're hitting some good hits, like they're hitting doubles and triples. And the pay-per-views still continue to deliver. That's not even the question. And really, did we have any bad pay-per-views this year? Not really. Not at all. I really can't say there was one pay-per-view that was worse than the other. Unless you talk about the end of the year, like Crown Jewel, it didn't matter. Survivor Series kind of didn't matter either. But everything else, SummerSlam, Clash to Castle, there was a bunch of things that really did turn out really well and enjoyable. Money in the Bank, yeah, there was a lot of things to go off of that were entertaining and exciting, and it was a very good year of wrestling. As I said, if we were going to get to the year in review, this was going to be a really wonderful time to go ahead and go back and reflect. Because I didn't have much to complain about and not very critical this year. Just kind of worked out that way. And I love that. And I would like to continue that going forward. But right now, both companies in the lull that is the WrestleMania off season, we're here at it now. And Triple H is doing the best he can. He's doing the best he can with stars that overall this year, they've been tarnished. They've been damaged. Okay. They were nice, shiny objects when they first brought on the main roster. And to the credit of Triple H and Shawn Michaels, some of them actually really came out really well. Not the current crop right now from the Rainbow NXT. That came from the Rainbow NXT and now they reverted it back to yellow and gold. No. We're talking about that. We're talking about the Full Sail era. The Full Sail era stars that come over. The ones that Vince got behind did well for the most part. And the ones that Triple H got behind that Vince was not filling did not. And because Vince did not have the foresight or did not lead with the foresight, the creative, to do something better with these stars, and some of the changes he made hurt them in the long run. when you look at Karrion Kross, deciding to go ahead and use the Maximum Male Models gimmick, I still think it was the right thing for LA Knight to have a different gimmick, not to do Eli Drake coming into the company. I agree with that. People are not going to feel the same way, but I always did. And to try to go ahead and get back favor with him in the current gimmick, using LA Knight, which is basically just the continuation of Eli Drake and TNA, and bringing it here doesn't do it for me. It doesn't. Or even the Eli Drake and NWA Power. Same thing. But there's a limit. There's a ceiling to his potential. Because right now, LA Knight is back down in the mid-card. Back where he was. He's not getting back there to go up against Roman Reigns. That's not going to happen. It's a one and done. Karrion Kross, when you had him put on the helmet and then you didn't give Scarlett in the intro and you decided to really tame down his character, yeah, there's not much more to him. You just give him TikTok. Yeah, there's nothing left. This whole idea of trying to bring back the character that was the Vegas character, this real diabolical version of Karrion Kross that we all remember somewhat from TNA, from Impact Wrestling, and from MLW, and from the Indies. It's trying to go and just have him go as far back into his original persona that they should have used in the first place, and to retcon it, it's not going to work. I don't see it working. They've changed it, and Karrion Kross, for his other thing too, is he's also changed his look a bunch of different times. He does somewhat evolve a little bit. Let's grow the hair out. Let's do it a little bit different. Let's do something else. I like him, but there's a thing where that when WWE takes a star like this, and you're going to build a gimmick on Karrion Kross, then you're going to have to do what Vince used to do and what people don't like. That you're going to have to take the gimmick and you're going to make it your own. You're going to make it in the WWE style. That's what they want to do. That's what they choose to do. Or they're going to make a gimmick on their own that's going to be controlled by them. It's going to be completely theirs. And that's what they care about. That's what they want. This is the part where Vince wants it wrong. Now, people are going to go and dispute me and discourage me and tell me I'm wrong for even thinking that way, but I do think that way. No way other I could go and think about it as is. But we're going to talk all about that. Part 1 of the 2023 Wrestling Year in Review. And I think, we could probably cover quite a bit of ground. Keep it within an hour. And let's just see what we can go ahead and run through and make points that we can point out that were really good this year. Just glom over the first 4 months. Take us, part 1 normally goes up to WrestleMania, and we stop right there. Probably will take maybe 2 or 3 episodes to get all the way to the point. I got the anniversary show coming up in 2 weeks. I don't know if that'll just be another year in review or we'll just do something else. But, what I'm going to do right now is go through some current headlines just to keep us up to speed as to where things are right now. Obviously, there's nothing much to be said. World's End is going to be coming up in a couple of weeks, and that's being built up right now with the Continental Classic, with MJF and Samoa Joe in action. Probably a rematch with Christian Cage and Adam Copeland after what they did tonight in Montreal on Dynamite. A lot of good matches to be held up, right? And it looks like Riho just came back to go ahead and challenge Toni Storm, Timeless Toni Storm, for the Women's World title, among other things. So right now, there's a few things we're going to talk about in the current point right now. We can also talk about Final Resolution that's coming up this weekend as well. So there's a few things to bring up. Let's go ahead and start off real quick and just go through some of the headlines that we already have right now. People are complaining about the fact that, okay, no CM Punk this week. Not in it was mentioned, but not there. Instead, holding him off. If it was AEW, they consistently put him out. It wasn't one of those things where they hold back. And this is the part where I don't know if that actually necessarily works. If you feel like you're going to hold him back, make him special, it doesn't matter. Like, the thing is, you're not going to just see when WWE decides to go ahead and just retcon and the revisionist history of theirs. Okay, we're going to forget that anything happened with CM Punk and the entire aspect of him leaving the company like he did. Took his ball and went home. We're going to wipe everything else out. We're going to clean the slate. We're not even going to consider his run at AEW. We're not even going to think about it. And that's it. They're just going to go ahead and go along as is. CM Punk just came back. 10 years later, no big deal. Blip on the radar. And that's what they're going to do. Okay. So they decide to go and do that, right? Then they move along and, they think that's okay. That's not a big deal to them. So now, with WWE, Raw was what it was. We might go and bring up what happened on the show a little bit. We can talk about some of the things that they're doing right now. Like, okay, B-Fab has now joined the Street Profits. We can talk about, the continuation of Santos Escobar as a heel now going against the LWO, setting that up. Okay. Some of those mid-card storylines. Do I really care? Because remember, LWO, to go ahead and just throw out the Legado de the Fantasma, let's just throw that out. We'll give him LWO because we're going to attach him to Rey Mysterio. The one attachment they can make to LWO, that's what they decided to do. I got it. And I don't think it helped Legado de the Fantasma either, because it's just that whole group is not there. And Santos Escobar really has never won me over considerably. I'm going to say it like this. He's a great wrestler, but he's Andrade. And I feel like it's the same thing here. It's like, just some of the Mexican wrestlers, the luchadors, when you're going to come in and you're going to work in WWE, Rey Mysterio's, that's the cream of the crop. That's one of the few stars of the luchadors that have come in that have been able to go ahead and resonate and work in that system. But that's the only luchador they can allow. Okay? I mean, if it was Vince Russo, he wouldn't even care about luchadors, right? He didn't either. Anyway, but think about that. The luchadors are not made for WWE, right? AEW does. And they do fine with that. They're using the luchadors as cruiserweights, almost like the cruiserweights were before, with Commander and El Hijo de Vikingo. And you're just getting all these new stars that are coming in, and we're getting to enjoy them. And then the ones that don't have masks on, with Rush and Andrade. It's great. I love all that. And the Lucha Brothers. It's a wonderful addition to the roster there to have them in. But when you look at what they've got right now in the luchadors, it's that ongoing thing that even Vince couldn't get right. They just don't get the luchadors. They don't know how to go ahead and use them right, and feel like they can go ahead and just have somebody else as an offshoot to that. Plus, they want to combine, different Latinos into the world order, which doesn't make sense either. I mean, first of all, Joaquin Wilde is Filipino, but I guess it counts. We have, Zelina Vega, Puerto Rican. That's offshoot. And then, Carlito's also Puerto Rican. Like, okay, so Puerto Rican, Mexican, we're going to put that all together, Latino world order. When, you got stars that are not luchadors, and you're not even using the luchador deal with it. Meanwhile, Santos Escobar worked great as King Cuerno. What a great gimmick. It worked great when he goes, and that's the thing. I mean, the guy is damn talented. So if there was ever a point where Santos Escobar was released, he's going to get back to going, if he wants to go back to King Cuerno, he can. He can go back out there. But he made his bones everywhere else. The luchadors can always work themselves in CMLL. They can always go back to AAA. I'm sure that, the popularity of those stars at some point, if those contracts were to lapse. Imagine where AAA and Darian Roldan and Conan and the folks there want to have that continuation of the North American presence of AAA. And imagine if those stars, were working outside of WWE, and you can get them out there to go and work on these other shows. Think of the star power that you have. If some of the stars were to be let go, and they go into either CMLL or AAA and become just something bigger, but they're going to be limited here because WWE doesn't use luchadors. Same thing with Shinsuke Nakamura. They do not do anything to do with Japanese wrestlers. Okay, of the Japanese wrestlers they have right now, all right, of the ones they've had in the past, Taka Michinoku, right? Of Yoshihiro Tajiri, of, right now currently with Akira Tozawa. And I forget the guy with the funky jacket over in NXT. I forget his name now. It might come up to me later. I forget now. Now, the Japanese women, different story. For that works. And I don't know. because also we don't see that much of, because the women's division doesn't necessarily resonate as strong when we think about Wrestle Kingdom or we think about Japanese wrestling, because we don't think about, Yoshi or Stardom or all those other organizations. We don't think about that. So the fact that they all came from Stardom with either Asuka or Io Sky or Io Shirai, now Io Sky, or Kairi Sane, or, it's those stars, it's a different story. And Xia Li just being brought into there and like kind of being attached, doesn't really work for me. But you want to have that international flair, you do it, and it doesn't necessarily work because they don't really cater to much of those styles. If they do, they always take more to the styles of the world of sport. Your European catch can, right? Gunther, Ludwig Kaiser. You think about, Sheamus and Drew McIntyre, they all fit in that role. And it makes a difference. So Brawling Brutes with Ridge Holland and Butch, that all works. That's a different feel, and there's a bit there, but also a limitation to it. Look, Fit Finlay was there for a long time, and it was very well heralded, but you know what? Was never going to get to a title. He was never going to be World Heavyweight Champion or WWE Champion. No. So you always think about these things where the normal limitations that have always been part of this company, they're still here because Triple H is just as unable to turn these stars over and do something different with them because they're within the confines of the bubble, of the WWE style. Because he can't make these stars turn into like the athletes that they can be and can't make it out there and to be wrestling. It has to be within the confines of sports entertainment. They just can't change it. They can kind of take aspects from it. They can take a little bit from it, but they really can't take anything out of it. They just can't replicate and do what they're doing in Japan or Mexico or Europe. They just don't. And part of it is that they also have to be catering to a worldwide audience. For everywhere they go, it's like, okay, here's a little bit of flavor of this, idea, this and that. You can do some of that. But the also thing too is that you've got to have your main event stars, larger than life, superhero types. They're limited on those. They're limited. I mean, CM Punk is not anything like that. He's just an anti-hero. Cody Rhodes fits the role. He's a bit of that Superman type. He could always be booked back into the role where he can go back up against Roman Reigns. Or if you want to put him up against Seth Rollins, you can. Seth Rollins is also built to a level where he can go over and take on Roman Reigns, but the way things are set, they don't want to do that. And I still disagree with CM Punk going up against Seth Rollins. I just do. Just not my thing. So Monday Night Raw next week actually is going to be hit pretty big because for whatever reason, Monday Night's going to have two games running at the same time. They're going to have two games going on during the normal time slot. Titans and Dolphins, Packers, Giants, ESPN and ESPN2 at the same time. Wow. Yeah. Raw's not going to get watched. Good luck on Monday night. You're not getting an audience. We're going to probably expect some pretty drastic low numbers. Because that much football in that many markets? No. That doesn't look good. Look, on both of those games, and again, simultaneous. I mean, think about that. Nobody tries to compete up against Sunday afternoon NFL. Doesn't happen. They're not even doing it where one game's starting at like 6:30 and the other one's starting at like 10. Something like that. They're not even doing that. Or 7 and 10 o'clock. They're just going to go into it. Two East Coast games right during the hours of Raw. All the way through. Like, what are you going to do in the first 15 minutes before the games start that are going to make you say, oh, you know what? And by the way, are both games going to start at like 8:15, 8:20? Or are they going to stagger the games out? That's the other question. Because I'm guessing, and I got to check that, I'm guessing that those games are not going to start on time. They're going to stagger those games so that you have a little crossover. And I think that's what's going to happen. So I don't know what it's going to be yet. I really don't have that idea yet. So that's unfortunate, but, you know, those nights where AEW has to go and move their, have to move themselves. I mean, I almost feel like Raw should have just moved themselves off Monday night. Like, don't take the bloodbath. don't take that ratings loss so badly. That's going to not look good. It's one of those things where, like, you know, it's too bad Raw can't move themselves to a different night to not have to compete, but they have to. They have no choice. They're contractually obligated. They're not going to move a night just going to do that. That's not an excuse. Unless USA had something to preempt them, but they're not going to do that. So that's going to take a hit. I don't know what you can do to counter program that next week. I don't know. Now, they do have a few things they're going to be setting up to go on with that. What they are going to have is Seth Rollins and Jey Uso. And now, I don't know if Seth Rollins and Jey Uso is for the World Heavyweight title or it's just a non-title match. But Drew McIntyre, Sami Zayn, again. Cody Rhodes will address Shinsuke Nakamura. DIY versus Imperium, and a 2 out of 3 falls match. So there's some good matches on there, but it's not going up against NFL. Not 2 games going on the caliber of Titans, Dolphins, Packers, Giants. Now, Titans, and the thing is, yeah, Titans, Dolphins, both teams are in playoff contention. Packers are still in playoff contention. So there's something there. And, you know, the whole New York Giants, Tommy DeVito thing, I guess people will be interested in that. Another story that came out today is there's word right now that Vince McMahon is still within the confines of TKO Group Holdings. So here's some new information. Currently, we're finding out this. Triple H is responsible for almost everything of the creative right now moving forward. McMahon is currently not involved creatively as Ari Emanuel, the CEO of Endeavor, decided to have Triple H stay in charge of creative without influence from McMahon for making last-minute changes. And then McMahon sold $700 million in TKO stock, 8.4 million shares sold, 25% of his holdings in TKO. So people were asking about his long-term future. Well, Sports Illustrated actually reported on this today, and they said that McMahon has no plans to leave the company. He reportedly needed to have the money liquid, so he sold much of his stock. Unclear why he needed it. But remember, he has projects he was always looking at once he was going to be let go, if he was going to be not able to go and come back. Because remember, he was still going through the controversy of the allegations that were going up against him and the SEC investigation. All that was still going on with him as well. We didn't know anything more about it. But the word is right now is that McMahon is handling items assigned to him by Ari Emanuel directly, and that the working relationship remains positive. And Dana White spoke with Sports Illustrated and mentioned mentioned Vince McMahon's value to the TKO enterprise. Quote, "We didn't have a great history before this," Dana White said. "But now that we're partners, Vince could not be a better partner. And you know me, if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't give a fuck, and I'd say so. But it hasn't been the case. He's been a great partner." You know, it's always been like that. You know, Vince has always been good for business, and the people that worked around him have worked well with him. That's one thing that we said about him. That guy will work well for business when it is for the sake of business. Now, another story I want to bring up before we get into the rest of the year in review is some new Next in Line program signees. New announcements were being brought out. We're going to talk about that. Now, 14 college athletes have been signed. So they have the following stars that are coming in. 2 of the top-ranked wrestlers in the nation. By the way, we still don't have no Gable Stevenson yet. And no Cavender twins. They have not come in yet. We're waiting on them. And, of course, some people are still asking for Jade Cargill. Where is she at? Take time. You know, when I talked earlier about the stars that get brought in and, you know, they're going to screw it up. Like, this is one of the few chances that Triple H really can do something really massive and big for Jade Cargill. So they brought her out there, but with not much to be said. They're just like, okay, she's here. They wanted to, you know, recognize that she's there, and that's it. But they're not doing anything else with her right now. Just a tease. But they have plans for her. And it's much better off that they, at least, if they're going to make the effort, they're going to get it done right, then take the time for it. Take the time. Let's see what they do. Oh, by the way, who's not next in line is Maya Lesnar. If you haven't been watching on TikTok or just on the feeds out there, Maya Lesnar is Brock Lesnar's daughter, the daughter of Brock Lesnar and Sable, Rena Mero. And I don't know what Brock Lesnar did, but his seed is strong. Because that woman looks a spitting image of Brock Lesnar in his at the beginning of his career in WWE, right? He looks like Brock Lesnar as a collegiate wrestler. She's strong. She's massive. She's built like a brick house. And let me tell you, the fact that she broke some shot put record, like a world, almost like a world record on shot put. What? And I saw, you know, in terms of like, you know, being like a decathlete, just, oh boy. Maya Lesnar won the genetic lottery. She is, I mean, it's like another beast incarnate has been made. And if she wants to go into WWE, let me tell you, people are not going to say anything. She will make China look like a stepping stone. I mean it. She will make China look like a stepping stone. No kidding. All right, so some of the names that have been brought into the NIL program, their fourth class, two-time All-American Lucas Davison from the University of Michigan, former Big 12 champion Stephen Buchanan from the University of Oklahoma. And they have their first acrobatics athlete, Bailey Humphrey from Baylor University, the first baseball player, Adam Berghorst from Indiana State, and their first male cheerleader, Sling Glover from Ohio State. So, yeah, we're going to get back we're not going to get the Spirit Squad. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Don't do that. Don't do that. Can't be that. And by the way, I'm also seeing who Bailey Humphrey is from Baylor. She is very much a jacked up specimen of a woman over here and extremely strong. It's going to be interesting to see how they're going to make her really come off very feminine, because she has a very strong athletic feel to her. She's got a great body. She's in incredible shape. It's just, I don't know, man. She's just another specimen. Like, really, wow. We'll see how that works. But yeah, she's a very interesting ring going on, right? So there's that. There's others they brought in here, but that was just some of the names that were specific to this right now. So let's go ahead and take ourselves back to the start of the year and get started on the Wrestling is Real year review for the year of wrestling 2023. We go back to January, and WrestleMania at that time was already being ready to be put as a sellout. They were already set to go and have it sell out. They were going to be good to go in Hollywood. And the talk of the World's Championship split to consider, which was done at this point. Mercedes Moné comes to AEW. She first was going to Wrestle Kingdom, and she was appearing there. All that going on. We had the decision of what was going to happen with Roman Reigns and how his run was going to continue to go forward. We were getting the rumblings of the first ever Mountain Dew pitch black match, right? All of that. And there was a lot more to that. Josh Alexander became the longest reigning Impact Wrestling World Champion by that point, before he gets hurt. And Wrestle Kingdom also happened during that time, so we had all that going on all in one shot. And then we get Vince McMahon coming back to the company. Somehow he made it back. And people are asking themselves, how did this happen? And how is it that Vince was able to go and get back into the company and be able to get things back up and going again, which was quite fascinating, honestly. There's just some reason that people just don't think it can't happen. But I can tell you that because of the fact he's back, because of the fact that he's going to come back in for these broadcast deals, if it's not the broadcasting rights, the point is it could be one of two things. It could be the broadcasting rights that eventually are going to be formulated and put together because of what's happening. But then the other thing is that you're going to see that there is even a better chance, because of the way streaming is right now, the way these big media corporations are operating right now, there's a very good chance that WWE, they might not be able to go ahead and get, or might not have to go ahead and offer to get the rights deal with a company and continue to operate themselves, when Vince McMahon could just take a nice big payout with the valuation of the company being $5.4 billion and getting a $6 to $7 billion sale. Cash out. Peace out. His company will have been sold. He will have done what he did, and he's off and running. So remember, that was the original valuation, $5.4 billion. And remember, when it's all said and done, he was able to get it sold for $9 billion. And of course, his stock's equal to what, like $8.4 billion. He made the money. Big time. Vince did very well for himself. A lot of credit due to him for able to get what he was able to get done. So I can't knock him for that. And how he was able to make himself go so well. And then there was the part, a couple weeks later, we had people thinking that Vince was selling to the Saudis. Remember that part? I think Steven Muehlhausen and Cassidy Haynes were not necessarily in on the rumor. They probably took it as fact, took it from the source they got it from, or sources they got it from, and said, okay, we have a deal in place now that already WWE, according to what's being said, that there was a deal in place to sell WWE to Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. That was the story. Originally reported by Steven Muehlhausen of DAZN Tuesday, Cassidy Haynes of BodySlam.net followed along. And then the other reporters came along, wanted to follow and find out if this story is true. Meltzer couldn't tell you anything. Sean Ross Sapp couldn't tell you anything. Ariel Helwani, he was told, and this is Bleacher Report I'm reading from tonight, because Bleacher Report gives a report and says, WWE does not have a deal to sell to Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. End point. Stop. End stop. I still remember when they give that story. This is where the dirt sheets go ahead and give their things right. And by the way, of course, somebody else runs with the story first. And when the dirt sheets say, well, okay, we'll try to go along with it too, thinking they're going to be able to get away with it. And say, oh, well, there's nothing happened here. Nothing to see here. It was just a rumor. It was, the normal stuff that we always hear, right? We get all that part. So that was the Vince McMahon stuff we had after that. And for whatever reason, I got a whole lot of people that were really up and at it when Mickey James won the Knockouts title at Impact Wrestling's Hard to Kill later in January. And then we went on and tragedy struck. Because it was not too long after that we lost Jay Briscoe. And I talked about him and the impression he left on Today's Pro Wrestling. Not to be forgotten. From Figure 4 Online and Wrestling Observer, they didn't know how many vehicles were involved, but the driver of the other car also died. And Briscoe was set to turn 39 years old. His brother Mark, his birthday's today. Anyone that lost a very close loved one, you know how this hurts. You can feel that part. But I don't even know I could even fathom how much grief there must be in that household right now. 2 young daughters, very close-knit family. I mean, just an immense amount of respect for his craft in the world of professional wrestling. There just was. Now, last night, I wrote on Twitter, and this was the first thing I thought about when I saw the story. I said to myself, it was just what I thought about right off the bat. Jay Briscoe would have excelled in any era of professional wrestling. Any era. And I mean that. It's kind of interesting, too, now that we're kind of removed so many months from Jay Briscoe's passing, and we're going to come up with the Iron Claw movie coming up on the 22nd of December, which I'm going to be there to watch opening night. And the story of the heralded Von Erich family, which, the Briscoes and Von Erichs, you could see some similarities to them because of the popularity of them being blood brothers and just the closest that they had and the family closest there is. To see all that there, it sucks. And I mean, I give credit to Mark Briscoe for being out there and continuing to move forward as he has. He's been a trooper. I'm really glad that he's been able to move along with his career. I love that AEW continues to put out the Briscoe brothers. You see the graphics, you see the intro. They just kind of keep it in place in tribute And I really enjoy that. I'm glad they decided they're going to do that. Very commendable. So how do you like me doing all these instant clips right here while I go ahead and just kind of play back a little bit of what was going on before, right? I think some of that stuff is actually pretty good. So the Royal Rumble comes into play, and then Sami breaking with the Bloodline at Royal Rumble. And the cheer of the crowd, again, one of the most all-time memorable moments of this company happened at the night of Royal Rumble. I mean, they really did good. It took about 20 minutes to get through this, but they did a really good job of putting Sami Zayn through the pressure of saying, okay, that's enough. His good friend Kevin Owens, they made a point of that. And here we are. And Roman Reigns wanted to put Sami Zayn to the breaking point. He wanted to get him there. The way they got us there was really sharp. That's probably some of the best storytelling I've seen from this company in a while. It is really some of the best storytelling in one angle like this. It took a long time to get there, but they had to go ahead and really make the point and hit it over the head. That if you're going to sever this 9-month storyline that everybody's invested in, everybody's under the same Zayn now. Listen, you built that guy up to be a star. And now, you change it. Now you get Sami Zayn here. And it's funny when you hear Roman Reigns in the commentary, like he's going after Sami Zayn, the fact, hey, what do you want to do? You want to go back to being conspiracy theorists? You want to go back to doing jackass matches? Because that's what he was doing last WrestleMania. He's not wrong. Like, the heels bringing logic into the argument, and Sami Zayn, in the logic they had, could have absolutely stuck with the Bloodline, and that would have made sense. But they didn't. Sami Zayn coming to his senses and to his... He couldn't come to his friend's aid. But what he did was... He kept showing where Roman Reigns kept putting his back in front and kept standing in front of Kevin Owens, so that was a part two. But Sami hits with a chair. Complete betrayal. Everybody felt like that. And listen, when you think of the storyline too, Sami Zayn was going to go ahead and get screwed anyway, one way or another. I just kept feeling the skepticism is too much. He's not going to turn this around. And even if they keep him around, it's going to be something where he's going to continue to be bullied because he's really not part of that family. And that's what makes the story. I mean, part of it is Sami Zayn wanted to be a part of this. He wanted to be in this. He was all in. And all of a sudden, here we go. Gets to this point when Kevin Owens gets in the way of it. And Kevin Owens is basically trying to get him out of there. Because early on, remember, we saw Kevin Owens trying to tell Sami Zayn, you need to get out of this. Like, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And here's what happens. See, now you get the dynamic where if the plan was to get Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens to take the belts off the Usos, now you have that story you can tell. Which they would later tell. You had so many different pieces going into WrestleMania with this Bloodline storyline that worked so well. And I can't even tell you how well that was done. Now, that was one thing they were doing. Cody Rhodes, Rhea Ripley, they won the Royal Rumble, and they claim who they're going to go ahead and after to get their respective title matches. Remember we were going through all this? I called it the mid-card Kumbaya makeover. It's not much difference now. This is the Kumbaya. The idea is we're going to make sure everybody's happy. In harmony, Kumbaya, WWE, Kumbaya. That's what's going on right now. Vince McMahon, to the credit, you might have gimmicks that might have not gone well, and it might have been shitty, but it was something where at least you knew what the gimmicks were. So the other ones, yeah, it's the idea of like we're going to make the gimmicks more to the stylings of what the stars are, the wrestlers are. But is it going to work? Are these people going to get over as a result? Now, some of them, the existing stars, yes. But really, Bayley being paired with Damage Control, bringing them up, has that made much of a difference? Seeing Dewdrop the Piper Niven, is that going to make a difference? You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't see how I'm wrong with this. And Cody and Paul Heyman confront each other, setting up for Cody and Roman at WrestleMania. Cody Rhodes makes the point about he recalls his family falling on hard times. Paul Heyman putting a call to Dusty Rhodes to appear in ECW, paying him handsomely as a result. Had Rhodes thanking Heyman for being a man of his world and a man of his word in his regard. And there you go. And remember, it was that. Before Dusty Rhodes went to TNA, I spent some time there. He was in ECW for a short stint. And it was something where, at that point, I mean, there was so many people in 2000 that had left ECW. That was the whole point. Steve Corino being now champion? I mean, he was down the pecking order behind when you see Shane Douglas or Taz or Sabu or, it was a lot of other stars that were in that right there. Mike Awesome. You lost a lot of stars right there that were former champions. And so to come in here and say, okay, I need some talent. And so he went to Dusty Rhodes. I was like, hey. Anyway, I was going into the ECW talk, but the thing was, they took that connection as part of a promo. Could have gotten over the heads of some of the people out there, but I think people knew enough about Dusty Rhodes and Cody and Paul to kind of put that together. But the respect angle to kind of get that all started was good. Well started. And it was at least a starting point to get somewhere into the whole storyline. And then we talk about Elimination Chamber, and the build for WrestleMania was getting well done. And the fact we didn't have a show after that until WrestleMania, we had a good, 8 weeks before we get there. It was just really well done. And then I just praised away, man. Praise like crazy. WrestleMania storyline, their storyboarding, and their superhero meets soap opera storyline, because they were really building it up. It was just amazing. I loved it. And really, the rest of the way through, I just kept praising. To the point I made the claim that WWE, had they started widening the gap on the other wrestling promotions, because they really just took over and just really made a big difference. Like, people were just, it was amazing how it all worked out. Because that was the part that really worked it for me. Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, tag team titles as part of the Bloodline storyline, and the Bloodline starting to fall apart a bit. And getting the rift between the Usos, which built to the crescendo of that storyline, where ultimately Jey Uso moved away and moved to another brand with no interaction right now. And I guess I can't mind that too much, because the truth is, if the Bloodline storyline as it was being so kept together, you had to create something that was going to go on that arc of a storyline. Something like that had to happen eventually. And it did. So I can't blame them for all that. All right. We're going to table. We'll then talk about WrestleMania and going forward on the next part of our 2023 wrestling year in review. But now we're going to go move along into a few more things that we got to wrap up before we get the show done. When it comes to Dynamite, one thing we got to take point that was quite interesting of all this was the fact that Ben Mankiewicz introduces Toni Storm. I got to take that right there and bring up how that worked out, because I'll admit, I kind of was just, I almost got a little bit caught off guard by that. And the fact that he decided to use someone decided to go and use Ben Mankiewicz from, the Turner Classic Movies. Known for the classic movies, right? I got to play this from Ben Mankiewicz. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Ben Mankiewicz from Turner Classic Movies. Every generation, a performer comes along who redefines what it means to be human. For some, it may be Garbo or Brando or Groucho. But for us, it's Toni Storm. Never before has an artist encapsulated the triumph and tribulation of being a woman in professional wrestling. Her every slam brings a smile. Every pile driver paints a picture. You've seen her in Portrait of a Star, Lover's Lament, and Hold That Butler. But tonight might be her greatest role of all. So sit back, chin up, and watch for the shoe. Playing the part of AEW Women's World Champion, this is timeless Toni Storm.
I love that crap. That's, somebody was being smart. They said, hey, we got the whole library of Warner Bros. Discovery. Let's go ahead and do a little promotion for the channel. Turner Classic Movies. Let's get Ben Mankiewicz. Let's get him to do a little something. He must have been there already filming some stuff already. So hey, can you do this for us? Yeah, sure. All right, we're gonna do that. He did not say tits out. I must say, I enjoy Sky Blue now. Her look is amazing. She's blossomed. And I do enjoy seeing her out there. Now, while we could say something about Britt Baker not being happy she's getting a lot of screen time, because she's not. But seeing the stars like Willow Nightingale, Toni Storm, Sky Blue, Julia Hart, I can't complain about that. I actually like what we're seeing of the women right now anyway. So I really can't say much. Mercedes, okay, but still, for me, I'm enjoying it right now. And seeing now that Riho comes back, also enjoying that right now. Hikaru Shida, enjoying that right now. For the most part, I really do. I like all that. And as for the AEW show tonight in Montreal, Continental Classic continues. We move forward. Jon Moxley moves forward in the tournament and gets his points in the tournament. Roderick Strong throws away the wheelchair. And then Adam Page confronts MJF, sees he was a devil. And Samoa Joe and MJF have some words. Swerve Strickland beats Mark Briscoe in a Continental Classic match. And Jon Moxley and Swerve Strickland will face each other next week in the Continental Classic. Toni Storm over Sky Blue. Jay White and Jay Lethal face each other in a Continental Classic match, and Jay White wins. And a TNT title match, Shayna Wayne comes in to interfere. And Cage wins with a whole lot of help. So they went with that. And, we'll get that there. Obviously, we should get a match set up for World's End. Hopefully that's what's going to be allowed anyway soon enough. Impact Wrestling has Final Resolution, their final wrestling card as Impact Wrestling. And that's coming up on Saturday. Motor City Machine Guns versus Josh Alexander and Zack Sabre Jr. are set up. We'll also see Jake Something versus Jason Hotch, Mike Bailey versus Trey Miguel, Moose versus Rhino, Trinity and Jordan Grace versus Deonna Purrazzo and Giselle Shaw, ABC against Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards. Nothing really special, it's just one of their normal cards that they always do. So I'm going to take Kazarian over Sheldon Dean. I'll take ABC to retain the tag team titles. I'll take, Deonna Purrazzo and Giselle Shaw over Trinity and Jordan Grace. I'll take Moose over Rhino. I'll take Mike Bailey over Trey Miguel. I'll take Jake Something over Jason Hotch. And I'll take Tommy Dreamer over Diener for the Digital Media Championship. And I will take Josh Alexander and Zack Sabre Jr. to defeat the Motor City Machine Guns. That's what I'll look at. And as we were talking about, World's End is coming up at the end of the month. Final Battle is actually coming up next week. And so far, the card looks like this. Dalton Castle versus Commander versus four other names in the Survival of the Fittest six-way match for the World Television title. So these are all six names are going to be going up against the vacated Ring of Honor World Television title that Samoa Joe had relinquished to go up against MJF. Athena versus Billy Starks for the Women's World title. I don't see Athena losing anytime soon. And Keith Lee versus Shane Taylor. That'll be fun. That would be good right now to see how it works so far. And as we said, World's End coming up December 30th. So far, we have for that card MJF versus Samoa Joe and the AEW World title and the Tournament Championship final of the Continental Classic. So it's all scheduled so far. That's the show for tonight. Thanks for listening in, finding as you always do. I appreciate all of you, catching up with the program. We're coming up on the 11th anniversary of the program. Continuing to move on to the show. Commitment to excellence, podcasting excellence right here on the King of Podcasts radio network, the podcast network. And I appreciate all of you always sticking around and listening to the program. As always, kingofpodcasts.com is where all the content's at. kingofpodcasts.com. Please subscribe on YouTube if you haven't done so. I see the numbers continue to go up. Trying to get to 500 subscribers as soon as I can to start monetizing the feed. It would be wonderful to do that. And also, find King of Podcasts on all social media so you can see the clips every week that I put up. So until next week, remember that you got to come back for another Wrestling is Real podcast because wrestling needs us.